Welcome to the Tristan Law Show. If it's your first time here, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm your host today, semi-retired pro wrestler, and your host, Tristan Law. Thanks so much for joining me today. But, what if I told you that TNA and WWE, two companies that have a huge history, that now they're like allies? That's right, you heard it right here. If you've been living underneath a rock and you haven't heard it, they've been like in this huge partnership that came through yesterday. Like before, they've had like an agreement that they had before. It was more like a gentleman's agreement where two people would just shake hands and just agree to things. But now it's official. We're going to be able to see, due to this multi-year partnership, we're going to see NXT and TNA talent together on weekly shows, select pay-per-views, and WWE premium live events. But here is the big question, because I'm thinking, storyline in advance. Are they truly partners? Or is it setting the stage for wrestling's next greatest rivalry? Oh my God, there's just so much for us to think about today. But in this episode, we're going to break down what this deal means for both companies. We're going to look at some dream matches and how TNA might finally reclaim its throne and its place to wrestling as the number 2 company. So make sure you stick around because we're asking some bold questions today. What happened if WWE loses? So looking at the partnership between TNA and WWE right now, the press release came out yesterday, and it's groundbreaking. It's multi-year. It's something that we know that the WWE doesn't normally do. They don't normally play outside of their sandbox, but since Vince McMahon's kind of like gone away, we don't really get to hear. I know, yeah, we're clapping because Vince McMahon's gone away, but because Vince McMahon has gone away, we're now looking at pro wrestling in a much different place. Because now it's like Triple H has said, we are open for business. What does that mean? And now we finally understand what that means. If it's your first time here, this podcast is interactive, whether you're watching it live or on demand. So be sure to put a message in the chat and we can interact and talk about it for a little bit. But some of the highlights that I have from the little deal that TNA and WWE got going on. NXT superstars and TNA Impact wrestlers will all show up on the same pay-per-views. They'll show up on Impact, on Access TV or the TNA Plus app. That's another thing for another day. They'll show up on NXT on the CW and on select WWE premium live events. And I think when they say select, they might mean like the Royal Rumble. Wink, wink. Or, maybe like a TNA pay-per-view or something like that. Some of the key matches that have already been put to fruition. Oh, I got fat fingers. Sometimes you just press the wrong button. But some of the key things that you can look at is former TNA Knockouts champion Jordan Grace. She faced Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship at Battleground. And then we had Joe Hendry, who battled Ethan Page for the NXT Championship at No Mercy. So those are some really the cool things that have happened already. Those are the things that actually, laid the groundwork for what it is that we are seeing today. I think something that really is good for this deal as well, too, that it really focused on development. The WWE could view this as an opportunity for NXT stars to gain experience with TNA's season roster. While TNA benefits from this exposure because WWE has not this national exposure. They have global exposure, right? So almost anywhere in the world, you're going to be able to watch some WWE. Let's take a look at the chat and see what we got. We got Oscar Williams. Roscoe said, this is a great duo. He goes, would the shows be longer now? Very good question. I don't think that the shows would be longer. I think that it's going to be for the NXT wrestlers. A lot of them have never really wrestled outside of NXT. They have a huge influx on the NIL athletes from college, and there's not that many people that actually came up and cut their teeth in the indies. There are a lot of people that that played football in college, or they ran track and they went to WWE and got a job, and that's where they learned how to wrestle. And when you only wrestle in one place, you only work one style. So WWE NXT is not like a touring company. They don't tour. They might just run like the NXT show and then throughout the week they just like do nothing else. But it's really good because select NXT superstars will get the ability to wrestle with other people. One of the things that I learned for me when I wrestled is that I became better when I wrestled different people. Everybody has different styles. So you'll get styles like, like New York has a style, New England has a style, Florida has a style, Mexico, Canada, and Japan all have their own styles. So those are some of the things that I think would be great for all the wrestlers involved. Thank you so much for your question. When you're looking at the growth now, TNA, this partnership has already boosted TNA's visibility because WWE has not gotten in bed with anybody for a very long time. Like, they've been in bed with like ECW back in the day, or like they've been in bed with different companies, but nothing like of this magnitude. And I think it's just going to be so good because now you're going to be able to get that interest in that TNA product. It's something else for everybody to watch, because it's like, if you're watching this now, you might want to go watch that because the person that you kind of like might come over, and how will the storylines come through? And we're going to be looking at some of the storylines that I came up in my mind. Global Reach TNA programming will continue to air on platforms like Access TV, and I think it sucks because Access TV, not everybody gets it. So if you don't get it, you go pay $9.99 and you get the TNA Plus, that you can watch the TNA Impact show, and it's like, that kind of sucks. I want to turn on my TV and be able to watch it, or turn on a streaming program that I already have. Because I like how right now WWE's on Netflix, so you may not fully watch everything that's on Netflix, but you'll watch WWE. You might watch something else like Lost. That's one of the first shows that I watched when I cut the cord. Or you can watch, like on Max, you can watch Lois and Superman, something that I binge watched the first 2 seasons on Max. But I could also watch my wrestling as well too. So I think that right now, pro wrestling companies is having a standalone app where they only live. I think that's kind of going bye-bye, just like, traditional wrestling on TV is going bye-bye. But NXT airs on CW. CW's global, right? So, we've seen a lot of great shows on there before, and I think that it's on regular TV. You don't really have to pay for it. If you got the little antenna on your roof, you might be able to watch NXT. However, you'll be able to watch NXT for free. The collaborative vision when you're looking at this whole entire deal as well too. WWE's Shawn Michaels and TNA's Ariel Schreiner both emphasized the mutual benefits for talents, describing this as a way to blend competition with collaboration. Look, if you ask me, I don't think that there's any competition between the WWE and TNA. You know why? Because TNA kind of does like the same thing, right? They're really into sports entertainment, but they kind of do what AEW does as well too. They do wrestling really, really well, but they're not just sports entertainment like WWE, and they're not just great wrestling matches like AEW. So I think that either company that they could have gotten into bed with before will definitely benefit them a lot. And newsflash, TNA's been in bed with both of them. So I guess they, divorced. I guess AEW didn't have it to bring it. So they went to the big dog. They went to WWE because, when you want it good, and they went to WWE to go get it. If you like what I'm talking about so far, be sure to subscribe. Subscriptions mean that I'm doing a great job. And you know what? When we're done with this, share this with somebody that you may know. Just go on your social media and just hit the share button. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. Dominic McGregor checks in. Yes, the WWE-TNA partnership increases wrestler exposure by showcasing talent on both platforms, reaching broader audiences, and creating new career opportunities. I agree. One of the things that I thought, thank you so much for your comment. One of the things that I thought about as well too, TNA has been around since like Moses parted the Red Sea. That means they've been around for a very long time, right? That's Old Testament, right? And there's no reason that AEW should have came and been like number 2. There's no reason, right? And I think that TNA had a lot of mismanagements from back in the day up to now. There's a time when I fell out of love with pro wrestling. And what I used to watch was TNA. I used to live in Orlando. I used to work at Universal. And I would sneak over to the sound stages and I would watch the wrestling. And then after, I would go talk to the wrestlers in the back because I really wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't know how. And then I would go to the restaurant where they would eat, and I would eat. TNA was good for a while. And then I think it became too big for their britches. Right. And that's when I think the downfall kind of came. They allowed the wrong people to come in and try to manage the business. And, what they got is what they got. So I think right now, if TNA fails at this and they don't become any better than they were before, and they have to sell the business, I think that WWE should have the first right of refusal. That's right, I said it. First right of refusal, it should be to the WWE if their company can't do it. But you know what? I don't really want the company to fail. I think it's a great opportunity for all wrestlers to have a place to work. And something like this is a win for both promotion, because WWE NXT wrestlers and TNA wrestlers, they're going to get more reps. And reps mean everything in the world of pro wrestling, even when it comes to podcasting or doing the job that you do. The more that you do the job that you do, the better that you get at it. So you need to do more reps. For me, wrestling, I used to go to wrestling school every day, and I only became so much better because I went every day. And then I started going to wrestling school every day after my regular job, and then Friday night and Saturday night, I'd be at shows. So I was wrestling for like 6 days a week. I was in the ring, and I only became better. But now imagine if you're in there with people that are getting world-class training and different minds and different stuff like that. It's just going to be so much better. TNA is going to get that exposure that they really need to let people know that, hey, look, we're alive. We're alive and well, and we're not dead. That we're here. Comparing this to other partnerships between TNA used to have a deal with AEW. If you ask me, I think that AEW TNA deal was one-sided, meaning that only AEW benefited from that. And I think that with the brilliant minds in the WWE, not to say that nobody's not brilliant in TNA or AEW, but with the brilliant minds in the WWE, it's going to be beneficial to everybody, because I think that previous deal was only beneficial to AEW, right? You've got to, granted, AEW was a newer company at the time, and they were looking to like figure out their identity, but WWE is tested and true. They've been around since like what? The 50s, the 60s. The company even goes back further than that, to Vince McMahon's grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Jess McMahon. It goes back to Vince McMahon's grandfather. So whatever it is that they have, this brand that they've built, it's tried and true. So they're like, there's nothing to really worry about WWE trying to figure out who their identity is, or they're trying to put themselves over to make themselves look good, because they already look good. They're on Netflix. There's no other wrestling on Netflix. Okay, they're on Peacock, right, with NBC. What AEW got? Max? AEW has just downsized their arenas, because they're not filling big arenas, and I think that's great, and that's another topic for another time. This partnership, though, allows TNA to climb out of the shadow of its past mistakes and regain credibility. And in pro wrestling, this is what we call the rub. When you take somebody who's down here and put them up with somebody like here. So let's say like you have like, let's say The Rock, right? And you have like, let's call him generic wrestler B. When generic wrestler B comes into the ring with The Rock and does really well, he moves up a level, right? To where you be like, wow, like you actually belong here. And I think that's just what happened for AEW. It's important though that the fresh exposure for NXT and TNA, it's very critical for the growth of TNA. I just heard today that TNA is going to finally start doing live shows. And I think that when you do live television shows versus pre-recorded television shows, there's more of a must-watch TV, right? Because you're watching with everybody in real time. When you're watching a show that's already been recorded, and it's like people actually attended it before and they can like spill the beans, it kind of makes the show like, I really don't have to watch it because everybody's already watched it already. It makes TNA must-watch TV. And my plan is, if I was in charge of TNA, I would do one live episode, because they usually do 2 days. TNA normally does their tapings like over 2 days. So let's say they did one day where they did the actual show. And then maybe the next day they would come in and record like the next week. And then the next week they would come in to do another show. They would do that one live, right? 3 weeks later. And then the fourth week would be a recorded show that'd be recorded like that. So typically in a 4-week month, they'd only have to do live twice a month, but they're using the same venue twice, and it just works. I think that works so much better for them. Wrestling experienced talent for like the TNA talent. The NXT wrestlers are only going to become better, because I don't think that they're wrestling the Raw and SmackDown wrestlers every single day. I think they are wrestling each other, which is good. And I think that occasionally a wrestler from WWE's like Raw or SmackDown might come by and hang out with them, but there's nothing better than getting that experience all the time. You're getting to hear from people who learned from different people, and then you can come back and just adapt it into your style. Let's take a look at the chat and see what we got. Let's see. Dominique McGregor is checking in again, trying to be the star today. Said, do you think fans see joint pay-per-view events or cross-branded championship? Dominique, you're kind of jumping the gun here. We are going to look into that and more because I have a speculation onto what I think could happen with this whole entire brand, team-up partnership. And we'll definitely go into that. But if you guys like what I'm saying so far, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I love the subscribe. It means a lot. And be sure to like this. If you like it right now, go ahead and press the like button. And because you press the like button, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get a hand clap for hitting the like button. Really appreciate you hanging out with me today. I am live every Tuesday and Friday at noon right here on YouTube. So be sure to be here or be square. So let's talk about these storylines, these dream storylines. Whew. With so much that's happening right now, I want it to be so much more than just the occasional wrestler from TNA going over to WWE NXT or the NXT wrestler going over to TNA. I want there to be some kind of like betrayal storyline. Listen to this. Imagine talent betraying Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, the one that's in charge of NXT. Because every time on NXT, you see him shaking hands with them and palling around with them and stuff like that. And imagine if one of them just says, you know what? We want to be the top brand. So what we are going to do is that we're going to try to take over NXT. Now, HBK could stay involved as a mentor. He could stay involved as the corner man, and he doesn't have to really step back into the ring. He could be like, I guess he could be like the Woodrow Wilson for the United States during World War II, right? That's something that I think that Shawn Michaels could do, so that he doesn't have to get back in the ring but could still wave that NXT flag. I think it would be great if there was a defector, if somebody in NXT was like a mole, and what they did was they would relay information back to AEW and eventually help TNA to win. Because imagine this. There was a invasion storyline back in the day, maybe like 2001-ish. It might have been, it was like spring of 2001 when WWE bought WCW. And there was an invasion storyline, and guess who won? WWE, right? It's just so predictable. I think pro wrestling is so much more fun when it's not predictable, right? Because you're looking about, oh, wow, they're doing this on WWE. WWE is not just going to lose, right? Imagine if this whole entire rivalry went down. And what would happen is that TNA would take over, and it's like WWE would just have to fight back from up underneath to go back and take back their company. That would be so amazing. They would have to call on all the big guns just to make it work. And it'd be like a huge pay-per-view that I even nickname Cross the Line, right? Because they crossed the line when we let them, when we, WWE, let this pissant company into our arena to work together. And what they did was they stabbed us in the back. All we wanted to do was let them know that there's enough space at the table that they can eat too. But no, they wanted more than one chair at the table. So because now they wanted more than one chair at the table, we're going to remove them from the table altogether. I think at the end of something like this is going to make TNA so much more fun to watch. And if somebody takes my idea, go ahead, you can have it. You know, some of the potential dream matches we can have is like Josh Alexander from TNA versus NXT's Trick Williams. That's right. You're going to be hearing people in TNA saying, whoop that Trick. You know, that's something that we can get. We can get Masha Slamovich. She is the current TNA Women's Champion against the current NXT Women's Champion, Julia. She's out there doing her thing. You also have the TNA Tag Team Champions, the Hardys. Yep, Jeff and Matt. And they can take on the NXT Tag Team Champions, Nate Frazier and Axiom. Just some of the ideas that we can have in this huge, like, cross-the-line pay-per-view for people to just, like, you know, to get these dream matches built. You know, like, AEW did this already with their Forbidden Doors whole deal. And it's like, it was a thing that was like, you want to put together dream matches from like Japan and anywhere. AEW pretty much made it say that there's no company off the table that they would work with. But the issue is that they do the pay-per-view every year. So it doesn't feel like special. You see people from New Japan, they wrestle in AEW from time to time. None of that feels special, right? That's why Christmas is only once per year. If Christmas was every day, who would care about Christmas, right? People would have a lot more money in their bank accounts because they wouldn't have to go and spend Christmas money every day. I don't want Christmas every day. And I don't want something like this to happen every single day. I want that when I get it every once in a while, that it works. And we're just all happy. Let's see. They definitely could, in that cross the line, or lines cross pay-per-view that I have, or PLE, you know, it could, I would suggest that they have a mix of storytelling and high-stake matches to ensure that the event feels significant. You know what? Maybe even have to bring in a John Cena or somebody like that. There can definitely be a faction war between TNA and NXT's top stars. Maybe put them in like a War Games type deal. You know, the women's division in in TNA and NXT are really strong. So definitely put the best of the best together with the champions clashing. You know, like I said, the shocking betrayal to close the event, because it's like, yo, when you don't send everybody home happy and you do this event like on a Saturday or on a Sunday, everybody's talking about it on Monday, and it's like, what happens next? And it makes you have to watch. You have to watch both shows. Imagine if TNA, now the company that mold their way in, the number 3 company here in America, if they mold their way in, and it's like they can go in their television and say, we beat the WWE. It's like, wow, that's like crazy for a wrestling fan, right? This would be a long-term investment, though, for the pro wrestling, because it would give the fans the ability to fantasy book, to figure out what is next. But back to Dominique's question when she was asking about, will there be a specific championship that goes back and forth? I don't think that's something that is acceptable. I think it kind of crosses the line a little bit too much. You should keep everything special, because imagine the NXT wrestler, the WWE wrestler walking around with the AEW championship. I mean, with the TNA championship, or imagine the TNA wrestler walking around with the WWE NXT championship. I think that means a lot more than just a specific championship that just floats back and forth to the brands. WWE doesn't, and I don't think that really works well right now. But if you like what's happening so far, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Subscribes mean a lot. But looking at the future of this partnership, this could definitely lead to TNA solidifying itself as the number 2 promotion in wrestling. That's where they should be. That's where they should be. But when you let somebody else come and take your spot, like, what do you expect? There's no reason that AEW came along and was able to take that spot. AEW filled a void that was in pro wrestling. AEW is for the purest of pure wrestling. You just like your vanilla ice cream, and that's what you get. You're going to get the best vanilla ice cream. I watched Dynamite from Wednesday, and I think that the matches were solid. They have people with no experience in the ring. Well, let me not say no experience. They have people with lesser experience in the ring and people with more experience. So obviously we're leveling everybody up. We're having great matches. You know, WWE is on the far side of the spectrum. You always get a good wrestling match in WWE, always, right? But we're not there for the wrestling. We're there for the entertainment. And when it comes to the entertainment value, WWE really delivers. And TNA, where do they fall? They're right in the middle. They do a little bit of both, right? They have that sports entertainment, right, to where it's just like fun to watch and it's comedic and it's like dramatic, and like, but they also have that part as well too where you get really good wrestling, and it's a wrestling show. That's what it's about. Really good wrestling. Will WWE eventually involve Raw and SmackDown talent in the crossover? Man, it's multi-year. I think that the press release is exactly what it said. It's just with NXT talent for right now, but you never know what the future could hold, right? I think that as well too, that in this whole entire deal, that WWE and TNA, more so TNA, had to come up with some kind of like non-poaching rule to where you can just go ahead and just steal wrestlers from the other brand. Because I think that somebody like TNA would be at a deficit, because WWE could just come by and be like, you know, we're going to take this wrestler, that wrestler, and that wrestler. You know, so I think there has to be some kind of like, you know, non-compete clause somewhere, because, you know, because you were together while the companies were working together, you just can't jump ship right away. You can go to AEW, but you just can't go to WWE for this time. But the long-term success, look, I'm an indie wrestler. I've done a lot of wrestling on the independents. I know people that still wrestle on the independents. The independents is where a lot of us start before we get to WWE, TNA, or even AEW, or even Japan, wherever. The thing is that when the big dogs do good, the little dogs do good, right? It's the trickle down effect. WWE's on the top. I don't care what nobody tells me. WWE's on the top, right? AEW's running around saying we're the best wrestle, right? But WWE right now is where it's at, right? And when WWE does good, AEW's going to do good or do better. TNA's going to do great. The indies are going to do great. So if you can't get into watching pro wrestling because you don't have the money to go sit in Madison Square Garden, to go sit in wherever arena that is happening, look for a local independent wrestling show because it's definitely half the price, not even half the price. It's a fraction of the price that you would pay to go to a WWE show, but also as well too, it's more intimate. It's like going to like a underground concert to where you're like literally on the stage, and if you're lucky enough, the person that's playing the music could probably sweat on you. Not really my thing. I don't like people sweating on me. But what do you think about this whole entire thing that's happening with AEW? I mean, I keep saying AEW, right? Because they're like the number 2. They're like in my brain. What do you think about this whole thing that's happening with WWE and TNA? I think that it's a conversation that still needs to be continued, and continue the conversation whether you're watching this right now, you're watching it in demand. You can also follow me on social media at The Real Big Tris. Yep, go ahead and find me there. You can message me. You can have the conversation. You can start the conversation and have a chat. But thanks so much for joining me. My name is Tristan Law. This is the Tristan Law Show. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great weekend. Watch some wrestling, and I'll see you next time.